We want to give you a look at the Electoral College vote. And again, the magic number, 270 for victory. Trump has clinched the win and is leading Harris by a count of 277 to 224. And here's how he did it. By outperforming Harris in every major swing state, Trump winning the battleground states of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Georgia. He's also leading Harris in Michigan, Nevada, and Arizona. And here's a look at the balance of power in the U.S. Congress. Republicans have won control of the Senate with 52 seats. The fight for control of the House of Representatives continues, with Republicans hoping to defend their razor-thin majority. Democrats would need to flip 4 seats to win control of the chamber. With me now in the studio is DW's U.S. election analyst, Amien Essif. Amien, once again, the polls underestimated Trump, and he's won a clear victory. How did he pull it off?
Well, going into this election, 2/3 of Americans said they thought that the country was seriously on the wrong track. So it seems like the easiest takeaway from this is that Trump sold himself as the better man to go in there and to change things for Americans, whether that was for economic reasons, for security reasons, for things like this. The truth is that Kamala Harris was not able to sell herself as the candidate of change. That's my takeaway anyway. And what we're seeing on the ground with exit polls, looking at how voters voted, it blew pollsters' expectations out of the water. What we saw, to say the least, it was expected to be a close result, and pollsters, a lot of them did give Trump the victory, but what we didn't expect is Latino voters going for Trump. Kamala Harris got about 53% of the Latino vote, which is the worst result for Democrats in my lifetime. She actually lost the Latino vote among Latino men. Trump had a gain there. What we saw is that women didn't go for Kamala Harris how we expected. They actually voted in larger numbers for Trump than they did for Biden. Biden had a 15-point lead in women over Trump when he ran against him in 2020. And what we saw is Kamala Harris only had a 10-point lead there, and she was expected to do a lot better than that. So really, he exceeded expectations in basically every category that you want to look at.
There'll certainly be more to say about this in the coming days, weeks, and certainly in the history books. But right now, in the early hours, how are Democrats processing this defeat?
Kamala Harris and her campaign haven't made a statement yet. They're saying we still need to wait for the Electoral College tally to be finished. We still have some states where the vote has not been tallied yet, but she's expected to give a speech today. So we don't really know what her campaign is saying, but behind the scenes, there's soul searching going on. For the Democratic Party, a lot of Democrats say that the party needs to find a new identity. For the past 2 elections, and polls can actually show this by asking voters why they're voting. For the past 2 elections, Democrats have been voting against Trump, but not for Biden or Harris, so not for the candidate the Democrats have put forward. Harris, if you remember, was an unpopular candidate when she tried to clinch the Democratic nomination. She was selected as Biden's running mate and then became the vice president, but she never actually won any contest, popularity contest, to run for president. And I think Democrats have to contend with the fact that she just wasn't the popular candidate to get the job done. So a lot of people are saying, does she need to move to the left? Does she need to move to the right to get Trump's voters? So that's a conversation that's going on right now.
Let's talk about Trump's victory speech for a moment. What is he promising for the next 4 years?
Well, first of all, his victory speech was, he was basking in the glory of his return to power. A lot of the speech was about him and his movement, how he has a mandate now for the next 4 years at least. We don't really know what he's planning. But what he said was that he repeated that he's going to make the borders secure. He's going to impose tariffs, especially on China, to bring industry back to the United States. This is, of course, worrying allies of the United States. Tariffs are not a great thing for free trade. But what really came out of it for me was the sense that he is the head of a movement in the U.S. And if you're on the ground there, you can see that there's a lot of energy behind his campaign. People really see it as a movement, and he's capturing that energy.
And there was so much energy when Kamala Harris first got into this thing. It just shows you how the campaign is a long slog, no matter how short it might be. That's DW's Amien Essif. Many, many thanks, as always. The election result leaves the Democrats and Kamala Harris searching for answers. Data suggests Donald Trump made gains with nearly every demographic group compared with his 2020 defeat, including three key ones that have previously been the bedrock of the Democratic Party. That's Black, Hispanic, and young voters. Let's start with the young voters. According to the Associated Press, in 2020, about 6 out of 10 voted for Biden. That support for Democrats went down. Harris got about half the youth vote. It's a similar picture when you look back at black voters. 9 in 10 black voters cast their ballot for the Democrats in 2020. With Kamala Harris as the candidate, that number went down to 8 in 10. Finally, Hispanic voters. In 2020, the Democrats got 6 out of 10 of their votes. This time, 5 out of 10 voted for Harris. William Glucroft is a U.S. analyst and deputy editor for Parliament magazine. He joins me now from Brussels. Welcome, William. What do you make of this data?
What I make of it is that it's quite reductionist. And for as long as Democrats and pollsters and media organizations are going to keep running with these questions of the black voter, the Latino voter, the young voter, and not dig into some more nuance there, about socioeconomics, class, education, a number of things that transcend these groups, right? What is a black voter? Well, black voters are like all voters. They come from a variety of walks of life. Latino voters, Cubans vote differently than Puerto Ricans, vote differently than Mexican Americans, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on. So it's not enough to just say, well, we have the black vote with us. What does that mean? And to that point, we see exactly that, yes, overall, Black Americans are still voting heavily for Democrats, but less so. And in these elections that are so close, all Trump had to do, and we've seen Trump having a long history with this, is just chip away a couple percentage points here and there of women, of people from various Latino backgrounds, of people from various Black community backgrounds to get to the result that we saw today.
Let's dig in deeper with this. I mean, the math is pretty easy, and there's a trend here. We're talking a loss of roughly 10 percentage points from almost every traditionally Democratic voting bloc. Keeping in mind the nuance that you just referenced there, how did that happen?
I mean, Trump has been saying this was what was going to happen, and he was right. And we have seen this trend towards a more nuanced electorate, that these traditional ethnic groups and only viewing people as their ethnicity or their skin color and not bringing in, as I said, education, class, these kinds of things, is a big liability for Democrats. They are going to need to really rethink, what does diversity look like in America? Because they've always gone on this assumption that Democrats can win because the United States is getting more diverse. But exactly to their point, Democrats also want to see that diversity do well socioeconomically. And as people do better socioeconomically, they might have changed their voting habits and vice versa. So Democrats really have to rethink what exactly these various demographic groups are, what they want, because it's a bit reductionist, if not a bit offensive and patronizing, to say just because you are of a certain background or of a certain community, you will automatically think a certain way. There's a much more nuanced sort of political approach that the parties have to go after that Donald Trump clearly was very successful at.
William, how do you explain that this was such a clear, undisputed victory for Trump, despite everyone expecting a drawn-out neck-and-neck race where the outcome might not be clear for days?
All right, well, everyone except the Trump people, of course, we should probably note. I mean, there's a couple things at play here. Obviously, pollsters have acknowledged, first of all, polls are more of an art than a science. Pollsters have acknowledged it can be extremely difficult to get an accurate reading and an accurate weighting of Trump voters, of low propensity voters. We've heard this term low propensity for months now, people who don't tend to come out to vote, that Trump has been very good at getting out to vote. Very hard to poll those people. And also, polls have a margin of error, and that can span 6, 7, 8 points on either side. So that helps explain that. Also, let's keep in mind that in 2020, Joe Biden, although he won, he didn't win by the margins that many of the polls in 2020 were saying. And so Kamala Harris was going to have that much of an uphill battle to get to where she needed to go, and she didn't get there.
You just talked about low propensity voters, but there's another interesting figure that might help explain Trump's success. His support among first-time voters It increased from 32% 4 years ago to a majority of 54%. Significant.
Very significant. And I think Democrats and others need to ask themselves, why were people not voting and now they're voting, right? What causes a person to want to come out and vote? Clearly, Trump has tapped into something. And he's been very effective. We've known this, that he's very effective at getting people out to vote who might not ordinarily vote. From a Democratic perspective, almost in a paradoxical Democratic perspective, small d, not big D Democrat, that's a good thing to get more people to vote. So that is something that I think Democrats have to study very, very hard, how to reach in the way that Donald Trump and Republicans have been very successful at to get these people off the proverbial sofa and into the ballot booth and for their interest to be voting for them.
Well, the Democrat in question this election cycle, Kamala Harris, had surely hoped for much more support from white women voters. Anyone tracking her campaign knew abortion was at the center of it. Why wasn't that enough?
She did exactly. She did well with women, of course. She didn't do as well as many expected. She didn't even do as well as Biden did. There are many reasons for that. I think it's too soon to really speculate on what all the nuanced reasons were, because there's always more than one reason. And as I was saying earlier, women are a broad swath of the country, of voters. They're half the population. There's many different reasons that someone might vote one way or another, more than just being a woman or what have you. And it just wasn't enough, right? I said that earlier, as I said, Donald Trump chipped away at all of these groups, at all levels of society, at all corners of society. And regardless of what traction that Kamala Harris might have made, it just wasn't enough.
I'm really curious, in your mind, William, if you had to pinpoint one specific issue, which I know might be impossible, but which issue decided the election for Trump?
Yeah, that is an impossible question. Obviously, exit polls are showing that the economy, despite its macroeconomic strengths, is being felt by many Americans as having been as not working for them. And the fact is, the change candidate tends to win. And the change candidate this time around, and the change candidate for the last decade, has been Donald Trump. 2020 was a bit of an outlier because of COVID. Biden won that largely thanks to COVID, for as macabre as that might sound. And Kamala Harris was not the change candidate. And Americans were saying, we want change. Now, many people might not like the change that Donald Trump is offering, but nonetheless, it is change. And that's what people wanted for a variety of reasons.
Our thanks to William Glucroft in Brussels. As always, William, always nice to hear from you.